Okay, great.
Yes, and I know one time you had looked up something and that was found.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the City of West Palm Beach Historic Preservation Board meeting for September 22nd, 2020. Can we please begin with a roll call?
Amanda Schuyler,
Here.
Kristen Kellogg.
500 no parking.
Let the record reflect that Kristen Kellogg is not present. Dan Pickney,
06. Yeah.
Here.
Gabriel Jaslowski,
Here.
Ken Breslauer,
Here.
Reginald Stambaugh. Let the record reflect that Reginald Stambaugh is not present. Nick Satley,
Here.
Keith Williams.
Here. Sorry.
You may proceed.
Okay, thank you. So we now move on to approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Do we have any changes to the agenda as presented?
Staff is not aware of any.
Okay, thank you. Are there any members of the board that would like to make any changes to the agenda as presented? Seeing none, can we please have a motion to approve?
I move the board to approve today's agenda of September 22nd.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we now move on to approval of the minutes from the August 25th meeting. Do we have any changes to the minutes as presented? Okay, seeing none, can we have a motion to approve, please?
I move the board to approve the meeting minutes of the meeting of August.
25th.
I'm sorry?
The 25th.
Yeah, I'm sorry, August 25th meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We now move on to the report of the Historic Preservation Plan.
Good evening, Frederique Mittner. I wanted to share with the board that since your last meeting, staff has had 96 level 1 applications, 2 level 2 applications, and we reviewed 39 zoning applications. Other than that, just under general communications, wanted to share with the board that we will be continuing with virtual meetings for the near future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As a lead-in for our virtual meetings, I have a very long script that I have to read. So pursuant to Executive Order number 20-69 issued by the Office of Governor Ron DeSantis on March 20th, 2020, and Mayor Keith A. James Executive Order number 2020-05 issued on April 2nd, 2020, the City of West Palm Beach's boards and committees are conducting meetings through media technology and have released the requirements to have a quorum of its members physically present at City Hall. On April 14th, 2020, Mayor Keith A. James issued Executive Order number 2020-09, which specifically provides the rules of procedure for conducting city meetings, including requirements for quasi-judicial hearings. The members of this board appearing remotely were just read during roll call. To ensure the ability for the public to continue to participate in this public hearing, it is being streamed live and available for viewing in the City Commission chambers located at City Center 401 Clematis Street, provided that social distancing is required. Additionally, for those wishing to access the meeting remotely, they are able to do so directly through the applicable Zoom webinar link, as well as the city's usual media channels, including WPB-TV 18, the city's website, and the city's YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter feeds. Anyone from the public who would like to provide comment on an agenda item is able to do so through the following: in the City Center Flagler Gallery by dialing 561-320-3872 and leaving a voicemail not to exceed 3 minutes, by sending an email or video recording to hpbpubliccomment@wpb.org, or completing the online public comment form at www.wpb.org/public comments. Those accessing the meeting directly through Zoom may also use the chat or raise hand features. Anyone using only their phone may raise their hand by pressing *9. Regardless of method, please be sure to indicate the agenda number or case number for which you are providing comment. Everyone providing testimony this evening must have video capability and will need to be sworn in. We will do so at the start of each case on the agenda. If you are about to provide testimony and were not sworn in, please be sure to indicate such and be sworn in accordingly. After the applicant presents their case, staff will provide a presentation and then the public will have an opportunity to speak or have their comments read into the record from previously received correspondence. The board will then go into executive session. Prior to rendering a decision, the board will confirm no additional public comments have been received by staff. To lead into this, we need to let you know if we've had any conversations outside of tonight's meeting. So we will now declare any ex parte communications.
Ken Breslau, no ex parte communication.
Dan Pickney, no ex parte communications.
Gabe Jaroslavsky, no ex parte communications.
Keith Williams, no ex parte communication.
Reginald Stambaugh, no ex parte communications.
Nick Casatly, no ex parte communications.
Amanda Skyer, I did speak with Ms. Mittner about the cases on tonight's agenda, but I can base my decisions on the evidence that comes before us. We now move on to the public comment portion of our meeting. Are there any members of the public that are here to speak on an item not on tonight's agenda? If so, now is the time to do so.
Madam Chair, there's no one for public comment on a non-agenda item.
Okay, thank you. So we will, I guess, go to the consent cases now, and then we will swear in the speakers for our first case. So we have a few items on the consent agenda this evening, 4 to be exact. Can we please have a motion to approve?
So, Madam Chair, I am seeing in a chat that there is a person that wants to talk apparently about one of the consent cases.
Okay.
I believe that's actually a property owner. Tom, I think he just answered that he's actually just available for any questions the board may have, if there are any.
Okay.
Okay, so then, sorry.
Go ahead.
I move the board to approve consent cases, case number 16-36C of 617 Claremore Drive, case 6.2, 20-51 on 202 Lytton Court, case 20-54, 812 Biscayne Drive, and case 20-58, 820 North Sapodilla Avenue.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. If you are 617 Claremore Drive, 202 Lytton Court, 812 Biscayne Drive, or 820 North Sapodilla Avenue, your case has been approved. Thank you. Moving on to continued cases, case number 20-38, 2527 South Flagler Drive. If we could please swear in the speakers for this case.
Just give me 1 minute.
Unmute yourselves, please.
And Brian's,
Yep, that should be everybody for the first case.
Mr. Haniger, Sean, are you giving testimony?
you need to unmute, Sean.
Yes.
Okay, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be truthful?
I do.
Yes,
Yes.
Thank
I
you.
do.
Is Mr. Lawrence here, or will you be giving the presentation, Mr. Heiniger?
I think David's
Oh,
here.
hi.
I'm here. Hi.
So for some reason I didn't see you.
Here, I'm here. Wait. Okay, so let's see here. All right, so I guess, let's see, what I'll do is this. I'll share screen, see if that works. Share. Is that coming up, or hold on?
Yes.
Okay, so there's this is what's, let's see, whoop, that's not it. Huh. I've never had a problem like this before. So are you seeing, why is, what?
This is the rendering that's up, but previously you had the image up from your, I guess, a PowerPoint or a PDF that had all the images.
Yeah, give me just a second. There we go. All right, so that's showing now. Hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so sorry about the technical difficulty there. David Lawrence, for the record, David Lawrence with David Lawrence Architecture here to talk to you about our resubmittal for 2527 Flagler. This would be lot 2. So quickly, we'll take you back through the site pictures again. I think you've seen these a couple of times, but item number 1 here is Pershing Way. That's directly across the street to the south of the subject property. 2 is a little bit to the west on Pershing from the subject property. 3 is 2 doors west on the south side of the subject property. This is a shot from Flagler of the subject property. This is number 4 is the house behind the general's house, which is the one we looked at last month. And the rest of them are kind of irrelevant. So we'll move on. So this is the streetscape from before. This is the streetscape along the south side of Pershing. This is the streetscape along the north side of Pershing. This being this was what we discussed last month. You can see my cursor, I hope, right? Hopefully, can you see the cursor? Okay, great. Just want to make sure. And this is the proposed revised plan for the house in front of the general's house. So this is from the Pershing view, and this is the streetscape showing it from the Flagler view, and this is the streetscape showing the 2501 approved version of the elevation. So this is the existing property. This is the easement that we're in the process of abandoning right now. And this is the site plan showing you all 3 lots. We are taking, so this is the original lot. We are taking a portion of this 2501 lot to create this lot here, lot 2, which we'll be discussing today. And so that's, and then I'll go on to the site plan. So I think that to kind of go over what your comments were from the last submittal, I guess that was about 2 months ago. There was the concern about us using this common driveway, which I think we addressed in our submittal last month, that each house would have its own driveway. So the 2527 Flagler house has a U-shaped driveway that will operate off of Flagler Drive. And another one of the comments, there were a couple comments, that was one of them. The secondary one was that you wanted the house to more appropriately address Flagler instead of the motor court concept that we had. And then the, let's see, you wanted the pool building, cabana building kind of not to be as prominent. And let's see, what else was there? Yeah, so that was it, I think. So here we have the site plan with the U-shaped driveway with the gates. We had to pull the gates back a little bit for queuing and access. So now the proper front of the house is here. So the front door is on Flagler now. And we have moved 1 bedroom upstairs, so we have more of a compact footprint than we did before, so the coverage has gone down. And so we put the pool off to the side here, and then the cabana is now back here. And if you recall before, it had a kind of a connective trellis that connected it with the main house, and we've since done away with that. So this is the first floor plan. So you can see coming in the front here, we have a foyer, living room, dining room, family room, kitchen, and 1 bedroom downstairs. And this is the cabana with the pool bath over here, pool up to the side, garage in the back. So the nice thing about this design is that you don't see any garage doors from pretty much the road, Pershing, anywhere. So that's still pretty much intact from what we had before. So I'll take you to the second floor. This is the master suite here. This is 1 bedroom back. So we have 1, 2, 3 bedrooms en suite. This is the roof plan. We have a white flat concrete tile roof. And this is the first rendering. I'll kind of zoom in on this a little bit. So as you can see now that the way we've redone the massing, we've redone the design, the house very definitely fronts from Flagler Drive. So let's see, we'll go to the next one. This is a view from the south looking kind of north and west. So here you can see the front entrance. This is the lanai with a little summer kitchen off to the side. And then this, what we did too, when we reworked the massing, we reworked the massing so that this part of the house would more appropriately front Pershing and kind of give it a more of a frontal thing. You'll see that in the next perspective. So here we go. So this is the perspective from Pershing, and you can see our infamous lift station generator there that's caused all our grief. And you can see this is what I meant by where we kind of reworked the mass so that the house has something that more properly addresses Pershing. And I forgot about one of the other things that you mentioned. You guys mentioned in your meeting about the west side of the house, and we'll discuss those improvements when we get to the elevations. So this is the front elevation of the house, and there was a condition of approval, and I guess I'll address that last if that's okay. So we have the balconies here, very much fronting Pershing, fronting Flagler. So this is the back of the house. Let's see if I can zoom this back a little bit. So this is the back of the house. So you can see what we did. One of the comments was that we had a lot of blank walls back here. So we reworked the plan considerably. And you can see there's a little bit of symmetry in this part of the massing. And we've added windows so that when you approach this house from the west going toward Flagler, that you have more of a pleasing, that west side of the house is more pleasing to look at. And I think that was also, if I recall, one of the other criticisms. So this is the elevation from Pershing. This is a little trellis that we put on that one side of the cabana. And then this is the elevation, the hardly seen elevation from the north, which will be occluded by the future house on 2501. So you can see the garages are way back, totally tucked around the mass of the front living room. These are just some details of the house. And you'll see in the next slide that how some of these elements are compatible with other houses in the neighborhoods. We included some photographs of other houses that show some of the elements that are in this Bermuda style house are similar to other houses. As we can see, there are other houses in the neighborhood with the Chippendale railings, the white concrete tile roof and the outlookers. And then this is a house that's about I think a block or so north that has some of the more formal classical elements to it. And this is a house that's got a very similar chimney. And we just included this one because contextually it seemed to be it's a house more compatible with what we're proposing. So this is an aerial view of the house from Flagler, kind of bird's eye view. So you can kind of see over the fence to see the pool and how that whole deck works together. And that's our presentation. I'm glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of the applicant?
I have a question. David, can you just explain, I guess I can maybe see from this rendering how the elevations are working. it looked like in plan that maybe you had basically a wall around the perimeter of the pool on the south side that returned on the east side, kind of retaining a higher elevation. And I guess that's
This will be more or less like pretty much
where
this
it
grade
is.
is showing slope down a little bit, but we probably will pull this up somewhat, you know.
Okay,
So it won't come down so hard as the rendering shows. It'll be up a little bit more. So that'll be a little more level. But
got
you
it.
have to reconcile the grade situation here because it's up quite a bit.
Right, exactly.
This will slope up and be more level over on this side.
And just a technical question, because I don't know, is there any pushback with regards to having 2 curb cuts on Flagler because of the street and how busy it is, or that's not an issue?
I think we're permitted it by right. I think there are other houses that have it, and I think it's probably better than worse if you think about it, because it enhances your ability to use 2 different ways out and get maybe a better view depending on what's going on.
Right.
And our engineering department will have to sign off on that driveway permit, but we don't have their feedback on the 2 curb cuts at this time.
Okay. And then my only other question is, I know you have a trellis wall on the south elevation, the cabana. Any reason why you guys wouldn't put windows, or?
It was just such a small building, and we were trying to, make the west side have, because that west side is kind of a blank wall, kind of close to the street as you come down Pershing, and it is such a narrow little building that we thought that it would just be a little building full of windows if we
Right.
had them on that side. So we thought, well, we could. I'm sure you appreciate use landscaping and whatnot to kind of soften that small side was the thinking.
Got it. That's all I have for now.
Any further questions of the applicant?
Yes, I have a question. So here in sheet A5, the zoning summary, you are saying, unless I'm reading it wrong, but you are saying that the front setback is 26'8", and the required is 30 feet. Is that correct?
It's we're at the setback. It's the 30 feet. That's the mistake.
I'm sorry,
But it will be behind the setbacks. It is the 30 feet behind the setback. That's a graphical mistake in the.
Okay. Well, so you need to correct that table, right?
Yeah, we'll have to fix
Okay.
that.
There was actually, there should have been a separate zoning sheet that was included and that was submitted by the applicant. It's behind the, so it's actually the last page of the packet in this case. But I'm sorry, that actually does not include setbacks. That's just the percentages. I apologize. It doesn't have the setbacks.
Yes, it's sheet A5 that has the zoning summary table.
The dimensions on the plans indicate it correctly. I see it's the chart, yeah.
Chart's messed up.
Okay.
Any further questions of the applicant?
Thank you.
Well, I greatly appreciate you taking into consideration all of our comments. We really appreciate it.
I think it's a better building for it, so I agree with your comments, and I think it looks better.
Thank you for working with us.
You're most welcome.
Ms. Mittner?
Thank you. I will go ahead and pull up my PowerPoint, which has a lot of the same or similar images as the applicant. Frederic Mittner, presenting case 20-38. This is for the new construction of a single-family home on the eastern portion of the lot, seen here at the corner of South Flagler Drive and Pershing Way. As we've discussed previously, The lot is going to be submitted for a replatting for a lot subdivision, as well as a alley abandonment on this portion. The board last month already approved the rehabilitation of the existing contributing structure. So this evening's focus is just on the eastern portion of the lot that, pending approval of that lot split approval, would be then eligible for new construction. So this is the current survey of how the property is configured with the contributing residents to the west. These are just some images looking at the subject property. This is looking north along Flagler Drive. Again, this is the portion of the lot that is proposed for the new construction, a little closer in, and as has been discussed previously, lift station. We did get some feedback that the city is continuing to work on the relocation of it, but there is no commitment for a time frame on that. The wall element, which has been presented in the plans to be retained, some modifications for openings along Flagler Drive to accommodate the new drive. And so again, the request is for the construction of a new 2-story single-family residence and a detached 1-story cabana of approximately 6,100 square feet on the newly created lot fronting Flagler Drive. Proposed, as you can see, smooth stucco finish, a flat white tile with multiple hip roofs. I think that's one of the bigger changes from the previous proposal is the roof lines. Bermuda-inspired home. Windows are a mix of multi-pane with horizontal muntins. They're both fixed and casement style windows and white frames. And it is now an east entrance. And they are proposing a wood simulated double door and Chippendale railings throughout the different balconies. So again, as you've already seen the existing site plan, there's currently a swimming pool in the area. And then this is how the 3 lots would work. Again, what you heard and approved last month was lot 3. Tonight's presentation focuses solely on lot 2. As you've already seen the site plan for just lot 2, the first floor plan, the second floor plan, and the only 1-story element here is that cabana and the roof plan. The elevations that were presented to you. This is the front door. Staff has a recommended condition on that it does become a single door. The other elevations and some of the different renderings showing the different perspectives that were just shown to you as well. This is walking around. And then again, the streetscape relative, the line drawings relative to the other homes. And so you can see it's kind of been compacted more and condensed in its massing. The review criteria that staff used to analyze the request or the criteria in our historic preservation ordinance, the additional compatibility standards, as well as Secretary Interior Standard number 9 and 10. Those are the 2 that relate to new construction. We do believe the proposal meets those, and we are recommending approval with conditions that, of course, the alley abandonment and the subdivision process shall be approved and finalized prior to any permitting or work commencing on the new construction of this house. The perimeter wall shall remain and be restored as indicated on the submitted plans. That does include removal of 2 portions where the driveway would be added, and then the pyramidal portion being added at another location. We are recommending the front door shall be a single door with or without side lights, and that we do need additional information on the windows in terms of the product approval prior to permitting, to make sure that they are compliant with the adopted fenestration policy, including the materials and glazing, muntin profiles, and just getting those details right. Otherwise, again, we are recommending approval with those 4 conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of staff?
Yes, I forgot to mention, we're okay with all the conditions with the exception of the only one that we would respectfully disagree on was we would prefer that the front door be the double doors as designed. That would be the only thing. And partly it has to do with the way the windows work up above and some of the elements on that balcony, we just felt it looked better with two doors.
Ms. Minner, could you please explain staff's reasoning for the request for a single door?
We believe that is more prevalent in the historic district of El Cid to just have a single door, even if it's a wider opening. Again, that's usually accomplished through the side lights. And since the door is now a prominent flagler facing door, we believe that's more appropriate.
Okay. Are there any examples of a double door in the neighborhood?
I'm not aware of one at this time.
Okay.
Perhaps the applicant has an example. I don't know of one.
And we didn't have the opportunity to get one in time. So I don't have anything that I can show you.
Okay. Questions of staff?
So the existing historic wall, perimeter wall, that remains exactly as it was before, with the exception of the two gates for the driveway. Is that correct?
And the relocation of the one pyramid, let me get you, so that would be this one. So the gates are over here, and then the pyramid shifts, but I'll have the applicant expand on exactly where they're going.
We actually did not have the pyramid relocated. We were removing it in our plans because there didn't seem to be a logical place to put it. So that was in our plans. We really didn't have it removed. We had it removed, the pyramid piece. And what we were doing for the gate pieces was we're gonna, the heights of these pieces are, they exceed what's allowed, I think, by code. So the idea was to kind of duplicate the shape of them and put them at a height that's more commensurate with code because we're pulling them back. So that was the idea for that.
Is that pyramid, is that something you could relocate? You would have to replicate it now.
It kind of blocked a lot of sight lines, so we were not
Right.
real keen on keeping it, to be honest. It didn't.
I would make a recommendation that if it's relocated right in front of the cabana here, there's no site that's
Okay,
obstructed.
yeah.
That's exactly what I was gonna say.
We have zero problem with putting it on Pershing wherever you would like it. We will work that out with you, absolutely.
How about right where the generator is?
Yeah, right where that. Yeah, you betcha. Yep.
So somewhere on Pershing.
Yeah, we have zero problem with that.
Also, David, that pyramid really is interior facing. It was a plant holder originally. So
We'll dress it back up, make it nice.
all right.
So you would be okay with us adding that as a condition that you'll work with staff for the relocation?
Yeah, that we'll relocate to Pershing, absolutely.
And Ms. Mittner, do you have any concerns that the size of the original piers are changing with the two lions? I mean, I did notice that in the rendering.
Well, it's just it's a code issue, isn't it?
Well, but they're
historic
existing.
properties are exempt.
Right, you're right. I think these are really kind of key elements, and I think.
Okay, we have no. I was trying to anticipate that we were breaking the rules and trying to make it right. But if you're telling us that we can use them as is, then we will either reuse them or duplicate them.
Well, they're existing, so yes, we'll work with you.
Oh, great, sure.
And so would you mirror the same height at your new entrance that you're adding for the other portion of the drive?
I guess we would have to probably. that was another part of the reason they're kind of like, they could become kind of obstructions.
I think my concern is that, you know, this property is being subdivided, a new home is being built on it, but by preserving the walls, there's evidence of the fact that it used to be one property. And so I think that would be my concern in altering them significantly.
Well, I guess what we'll do is we'll, if we duplicate the other ones, we'll see how that works out. And if it's an issue where doesn't work out, we'll come back. So we'll agree to it. And if there's a big problem, we'll try to work it out with staff. And if not, we'll come back. So we'll accept that we'll duplicate those other ones on the other side to make a match the best we can.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Mittner, is that what you would advise, or?
That's great. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I think that'll really continue to let it read as the grand estate it once was.
Okay, great. And thank you for being amenable to that. Do we have any further questions of staff? Okay, I believe we have some public comment.
Madam Chair, I do have one Mr. Esqueta who I'll bring in.
Okay.
Just a second. Okay, he should be in. He'll just need to unmute and turn on the video.
Well, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, thank you. Could you please raise your hand to be sworn in, Mr. Esqueta?
Yes.
Oh, Hope, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. My comment is I live at 190 Sunset, which is direct. It's would be northwest of the property that they're building the house on, and then my views are directly east, and it would be affected on the south side, on my southeast side, and I would like the pool to be facing Pershing. And also, not only the pool facing Pershing, but I would like not to have an alley abandonment. I would like a bigger setback from the alley to the house. I just feel that it's just too tight for me to be looking at this massive structure. So I object to those plans. And if they move the pool to the side, in other words, move the pool to the north side and the house, the massing of the house be farther on the south side, but I definitely need the pool moved to the north side. Move the pool to the north and respect the alley, and I do not want the alley abandonment. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Esqueta. We appreciate your comments. However, we unfortunately do not have purview over the protection of your view shed. So unfortunately, I don't think there's any changes that we can request of the applicant based on your feedback.
Could you at least move the setbacks farther to the south?
Ms. Mittner, have they met all of the required setbacks?
They have, but obviously it's contingent on the alley abandonment, which will need to be approved by City Commission.
Okay,
and that's one of the conditions, correct?
It is that nothing can commence, not even permitting on this until those items are completely finalized. So if the commission doesn't grant that, there is a chance you're going to see a whole nother application in front of you.
How many feet is the alley abandonment we're speaking about?
I believe it's 10 feet wide. I will have to double check on the bigger set of plans.
6 feet.
6 feet.
6 feet wide.
Well, I mean, I would like it moved 10 or 15 feet but I just feel it's just too tight. If there's an existing alley and it's been dedicated to the 30s or 40s, why would you just abandon an alley? It just, to me, that's why I'm very much against this alley abandonment. I think you have to take in consideration all the all the dedications that's been there for years that were put there in a purpose to maintain El Cid, an historic neighborhood. And you're going against what it was dedicated for originally. So I'm completely against this alley abandonment. Thank you.
I think, Mr. Esqueda, that perhaps you can bring your concerns to the City Commission when they do decide on this, since we do not have purview over the alley abandonment. So you will have an opportunity to voice your concerns to them at that time. Ms. Mittner, do you know when that's going forward?
We have not scheduled that, but we'll make sure that the neighbors are definitely notified, as well as the neighborhood association, for that date.
Okay.
I anticipate it's not for another 8 weeks.
Okay, but in the meantime, can you not have it 6 feet? Can you at least change plans to have at least a 10-foot setback from the alley? I mean, you could do that now before it goes to the vote. And I mean, I would just at least move it from 6 feet to 10 feet. Can you bring that up?
Yes.
Amanda, can I ask Mr. Esqueda a question?
Yes, you have an opportunity for a rebuttal.
Okay. Should I do that now?
Yes.
Norberto, is the reason you want the setback moved from 6 feet to 10 because you're planning on living in that house for in the future?
Yes.
Okay. That's the only question I had.
Well, I don't think if I live in the house or doesn't live, it's a factor. The factor is the 10 feet is it's what it's dedicated for, and you don't want it dedicated, and that's what it's dedicated for, 10 feet, and that's the way it should be.
Well, it's actually only 6 feet, and part of the reason that we want the abandonment is pretty much every house on the street from Flagler to Olive has actually taken and used that 6 feet for the last 50 years. I think
It's not really a functioning alley. It's not.
Yeah.
Nor has it ever been.
Yeah. So,
by the way, there are no utilities in there either.
right. But I think the board's recommendation, we should just we can talk more about it at City Council. I just wanted, for the record, Mr. Esqueda acknowledge that he's really, this is an issue because he plans on staying in the house, and I just wanted that to be recorded.
Well, I don't know why that should be an issue or not, if I'm going to live in the house or not live in the house.
Well, because if you're not going to live there, then why would you care?
Well, I said I am going to live there. I own the house.
Okay, that's all I wanted. I just wanted that on the record. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both.
I've lived in that house for
Yeah.
20 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further public comment?
No, Madam Chair, I just wanted to let the record reflect that Reginald Stambaugh joined the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
I have not received any since the last meeting. I've had a few inquiries of if this item was going to be on this evening's agenda, but no specific messages.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move into executive session. So I know we have one additional condition to add regarding staff working with the applicant on the walls and relocating the one of the features and figuring out how they're going to address the entrances to the driveway and the piers, the existing piers. But we do also have a staff recommendation that the applicant does not want, which is the request that it go from double doors to a single door. So I don't know if we want to discuss that or if someone wants to make a motion.
There are two examples. The issue is double doors facing Flagler, correct?
Yes.
2881 South Flagler has double doors they're both newer construction. They're not historic homes, but they both, and the other one's 2723. Both of those have double doors on the balconies facing Flagler.
On the balcony or the entrance door?
Balcony.
Okay, I think this is the entrance door, correct, Ms. Mittner?
Correct, the simulated wood door, the entry door, yes. And again, I think side lights would be appropriate. So it could still read as a wider opening, but that it functions as a single door.
Okay. Any further discussion? I'm kind of on the fence about it because I mean, this house is not really, you know, based on any historical architectural style. There are elements that are borrowed from contributing properties within the district, but it's not necessarily an interpretation of a historical architectural style. But I do think there's something to be said about scale when you're looking at a double door as opposed to a single door, and that, you know, historic buildings are, you know, especially in LCID, are a lot of times a smaller scale than some of the new construction that we see. So I don't know, I could see it both ways.
I agree. Personally, I don't have a problem with a double door.
I like a double door also.
Okay. So does someone want to make a motion? Could be any motion, doesn't have to.
I'll make a motion to approve. Am I approving 2049 or 2038? I'm sorry.
2038.
Okay.
And there is that added condition. Well, it's up to you if you want to add it, but about the walls.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I move to approve as presented case number 2038 with the relocation of the pediment in the wall to the south side of the property, centered on the new proposed cabana, accepting the double doors as proposed, and then also staff's conditions.
Okay, and I'm sorry, did that not include the piers as well, the existing piers?
Including the piers as well, the existing piers.
Okay, and do we have a second?
Can I just interrupt?
Yes.
Yes. Can Mr. Williams actually make a motion as an
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I can't. Sorry.
No, it's just a question, Keith.
No, as an alternate, he can, because we are missing 2 members. We have a vacancy, and Kristen Kellogg is not here this evening. So obviously I'll defer to the board attorney, but I believe in the past they could.
Yes, you're correct. Thank you, Ms. Mittner.
I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for working with us.
Thank you.
Moving on to case number 20-48, 509 N Street.
Madam Chair, just 1 second. Oops. That should be everybody.
Okay, if the applicants could please raise their right hand to be sworn in.
Unmute yourselves.
unmute.
Are you speaking, Jim?
Mute here. Okay.
Will you be speaking, sir?
Yes.
Can you please raise your right hand to be sworn in?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be truthful?
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, would you like to make your presentation?
Sure. So I'm sure everybody hopefully remembers that our original proposal was to have a rather large deck on the second floor. And it seemed unanimous that nobody liked that look at all. Luckily, thankfully, one of the board members had the idea of having a deck as a rooftop deck, which everyone seemed to like the idea. And so we basically ran with that and redid the plans based on the recommendations and made the recommended changes and hoping that the board approves it.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions of the applicant? Okay, we'll now move on to the staff report. Ms. Mittner.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen for the proposal. So the request is for new construction as well as a Class B special use because the applicant is requesting a 1,000 square foot structure on a 50-foot wide lot with a kitchen in the accessory. We reviewed this last time that it is located in the north end of the Grandview Heights Historic District, where you find traditionally more dense development in terms of multiple units. It's also surrounded by townhomes and borders the downtown master plan area where you have the high-rise apartment and residential buildings. So the request for the waiver for the size as well as the lot width is something that we've reviewed and we believe is appropriate for this construction back here. So you can even see in the background the residential tower downtown. It would be accessed off the alleyway. And again, it is at the rear of the lot in a neighborhood that has many detached accessory structures, two-story in nature. So this was the previous proposal. And again, two-story, and it did have a large cantilever deck. Staff's concern last month was the proportion of that deck and also that there were no support beams indicated, unlike the appropriately scaled balcony here with these brackets. And so the direction was given to the applicant to perhaps enjoy city views utilizing a roof deck. And so this is what was developed by the applicant and his architect and submitted for your review this evening. So these are the proposed and revised elevation for this evening. And I apologize, somehow the floor plans didn't make it in, but they are very similar. And perhaps the applicant has those to share in their presentation, and they should be in your packet. Staff has reviewed the application, and we believe actually the original proposal is more in keeping and compatible with the historic district. So we would recommend to the board that you go back to the original submittal with scaling down that original deck. And then it would comply with the criteria in the ordinance as well as standards 9 and 10. Yet we also believe that the variance standards have been met, and we do believe you should grant those 2 waivers as we did previously. Thank you.
Okay, questions of Ms. Mittner?
So Ms. Mittner, by adding this access to the roof deck, I believe that this design doesn't comply anymore because the top of the roof of the door to access the roof deck is above, probably is around 30 feet.
So you are allowed to have small protrusions for additional, there's elevator shaft or items like that. So it was something the applicant had reviewed, and we believe we can make the height work. The height is in that sense also compatible it was really more the roof line that I was concerned about. And I did find actually these plans are the ones for this month's, the September submittal. So this shows the roof deck and the stairwell. It's just a stairwell that leads up.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely different. I don't think that this design really meets the quality or the criteria for a historic area, right? And to be comparable with a historic house on the same lot, right? It's a completely different thing.
Yes, we felt it was a much more urban application. And again, the roof line is something that you're not finding or doesn't have any inspiration from the bungalow from the front.
Ms. Mittner, how wide are you recommending the extension now be made, scaled back?
Perhaps twice as deep as these balconies. So I'll have to pull the floor plan real quick on that to see where we were in width. So that was 4 feet. So I'd say 8 feet maximum.
But without supports, because once you add supports, then you have to count that square footage.
Yes, so they would, correct. So it would not be supports that go down to the ground. It would be, they could perhaps have brackets like this that return back to the building, but it would be probably, it would land about here, about half of what's shown here. This is, I believe, a 14-foot deep deck.
Ms. Mentner, is there anything you think that the applicant could do change-wise to bring the roof deck into compliance? I feel like we gave him that guidance last time, and now
I agree, and I think it was a good suggestion to explore. However, I think the execution just changed the architectural proportion, well, not even proportions, just the elements so much that it went further away.
Is it mainly the way that they design the access? I mean, is that changeable?
I mean, can I speak? I was just-
Right now we're in,
Okay.
but we'll give you an opportunity in a minute. Ms. Minner, I wanted to ask actually, could they do an external staircase? I know we don't always recommend like a spiral staircase, but is something like that an option as access to the roof rather than an internal staircase?
That could possibly work. They'd have to take the square footage into consideration because one run of stairs is counted as square footage. So if they achieved it that way, that's possible. I mean, you see that on a lot of the accessory structures in LCID with the Mission or Mediterranean Revival, that you have an exterior access. So I think that would be a possibility. I just think it was more the roof line. And I agree that the applicant took the board's suggestion and that was where the direction came from. And, you know, I think they tried to solve it. I just think the roof line doesn't relate to other buildings in the district.
And primarily you're talking about the pop-up or just that it has a flat roof element?
Both, the pop-up and the flat, because it's not a Mission style structure.
Okay.
And it has railings instead of a parapet for if it were Mission.
Okay.
One question is, that's exactly what I was going to ask. Could you create a parapet that acted as your railing, but it still, you know, it's basically looks like the roof, but it acts as a parapet and it's open on top?
I would defer that to the applicant if that's something they're open to. I mean, I think it's certainly feasible.
And also the slope, you know, parapet on the south elevation really needs to be flat also. I mean,
correct.
There is no way to make it slope.
I'm not sure that a railing could actually aesthetically look like a parapet. I mean, you could have a parapet serve the function of the, of a railing and height, but aesthetically,
Yeah,
Well, that's kind of what I meant, and
right,
probably
right.
gets too complicated, but it's just,
And
the reason that they,
the pop-up element of it, to me, it just doesn't seem to work. I wish I could articulate it better.
I believe that the intention of doing the railing on the roof was to have the visuals, right? The sidelines to the views to the city, right? So if you do a solid parapet when you are seated there, you don't see really anything.
right,
Understood.
correct. It would act as a solid railing, you're right.
Correct.
I mean, just throwing another option out there, what if the railing was, terracotta or something like that in between, so it was more mission style?
Ms. Minner, what is the style of the primary structure?
It is a frame vernacular. It's been altered over the years. It was actually built in 1919, but of course the openings have been changed. There's been stucco added and these Bahama shutters, but again, this front-facing gable roof was kind of the inspiration for the original design that was submitted. And except for the scale of the decking, I thought it met all the criteria.
Gotcha. I see it now.
Okay.
I mean, there is deco in the, I'm sorry, excuse me.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say there is deco in the neighborhood with the flat roofs. If the board is amenable to that, and I don't know if the owner, an applicant, is amenable to changing architectural styles between the front and the back.
Well, I guess we've discussed, a couple options, and I'd like to hear what he would prefer.
That to me?
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't want to mispronounce your last name. I apologize.
Be my guess. It's Laquidara, but
Laquidara, thank you.
thank you. So I guess, I'm open to however we can make it work to some degree. It's just when you say Art Deco, and I'm surrounded by 2 Art Deco homes right there, one right next to me, one right across from me. What would the flat roof railing look like on an Art Deco structure? I'm just not familiar.
Well, again, it could be a parapet where it's a solid stucco, but then, right, you would lose the transparency if you utilize that. I was just throwing it out as a.
Sure. No, I mean, I think we're all trying to make something work. I just, when the idea was presented at the last meeting to do a rooftop deck, I mean, I just assumed that if we drew it as best we could, and you had sent me a couple of images for, I guess, inspiration, which based on the size that we're dealing with, there's only so many options to, and I had even asked, can we do the whole roof as a deck? And you said yes. And I said, how will we access it? And you said, interior stairs. So I'm just, I'll change the railing. I mean, I don't know what else to do. I mean, I think I asked this a long time ago about changing the style. I have no issue changing the style because to me, the front building, I know it's got that little gable end, but it has multiple flat pieces where they added on. To me, it doesn't look like a bungalow or a Craftsman. It just looks like, I don't know. I like the house because of the location, but it's got like every addition, there's a flat roof here, everywhere they added. And where if you look to the west directly from where this would sit, all you see is this giant parking garage for the convention center. So I don't think this is going to be, an imposition on the neighborhood. And I'm happy to, do whatever. I was just, really excited about the deck idea. And, I'm not sure how to make it work.
And staff is the one who gave him direction to say, utilize the primary structure as the influence for the design. So that was something I did tell him.
I think that's always good guidance.
Sure. But like I say, we could do any of the styles that would make people happy,
Mr. Laquadara, how do you feel about reducing the size of the deck by half from the original design?
I'm really kind of over that. That deck is, to me, it's a balcony. And we have a balcony, so. I mean, I'd like to see if we can make the deck work somehow to where people are happy with it. That area where you have that additional roof line where the doorway comes up is very small. It's not, we've kept.
So how you feel about maybe reducing a little bit the footprint of the structure, but adding a spiral exterior stair?
I don't know that it'll make that much difference in the look. I think it makes it less useful. I have a lot of, I see a lot of rooftop decks that just don't get used. I mean, they just don't, but I'm certainly open to just trying to make it work,
So, and just to clarify, Mr. Jaroslawski, you're suggesting the spiral stair if you were to keep the roof deck design, which is option 2. Correct,
but he's expressing that he's kind of over the original design of having an, enlarged deck, right? Because I am hearing that we could allow him to have a larger deck as long as he can cantilever it off the house structure, right? The wall. So, obviously that is a much better design from an aesthetic standpoint, right? Because we can keep the hip roof, right? That works with the architecture of the main house.
We can work with him on this if the board's leaning towards this proposal with the spiral stair and not having that projection on the 3rd floor or on the roof deck. So it remains just a very clean, flat.
Yeah, that pop-out is very disturbing to me. Also, the fact that it has a slope roof is also very disturbing. So I don't know if another solution can be found, to make it more pleasant,
Did we lose Brian? I don't see Brian.
Maybe it's a flat roof with, I don't know.
Where would the spiral, where would you think the spiral should go? From where? Any particular thoughts on that?
I mean, I'm going to throw this out here since it's very quiet out there, but I think personally, I think making this feel like an Art Deco house is going to be very difficult. Like it's nondescript architecturally. I think transforming it maybe into something a little more, like I was saying, mission style, Spanish style would be easier. And incorporating something maybe with, I don't know, stucco, small, thin stucco banister with a terracotta fishtail inlay on top would look more attractive and give you your railing, give you your views, give you the wind and the breeze to blow through it, and just architecture, I think, would look better.
Okay. So you said mission Spanish style?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks, but I just think
that makes sense.
As far as the way to go, I go back and look at the file and the photograph. It looks like from the 70s. Is that right, Ms. Minner? Of the residence.
That was the 1980 survey. of
Oh,
the-
80s.
Yep,
Okay.
mhm.
All right. It looked like late 70s, early 80s when it was taken. And I would defer to the architects on the board to provide greater input, but there's a charm there even then, that if there was some way to bring out some of the architectural features or nature, the chimney stands out. The distinction in color between the chimney and the siding, and if the original age of the building, albeit it's been modified extensively. See all the windows and everything's just been very, very modified. So it is nondescript. I agree with that characterization. But if there is some way to recapture the spirit of the original 1919 vernacular style, I'm not sure that it's possible to do that with 2 stories. I'm trying to work through that. That's why I want to hear more from the architects on the board as to where they see the best result would be, because finding it an end result as a stucco hybrid type of architectural style, I just haven't found myself to that end yet.
You see the other one, like east or north?
I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that last comment.
I heard some background noise. I don't know where it was.
I think that may be down in chambers or in the back here.
Do we have any further questions of staff?
Does anyone have an idea of where to put the spiral staircase or how that would work? So I can, I'm happy to change it to Mission Spanish style, change the railing, look at relocating the access.
Maybe it's not an issue for the applicant, but I would be concerned about the practicality of a spiral staircase,
And maybe
in terms
say
of-
regular stair.
in terms of, would it work? I was just thinking in terms of the age of his guests and so forth, having to maneuver that.
Yeah, and maybe just a regular exterior stair, because what we are trying to do with an exterior stair is to eliminate the pop-up on the roof. That's all what we are trying to do, because it's very...
I understand that, but maybe it's just me. The exterior stair of that scale reminds me of mill housing in New England, where they have things like that. It's not a nice look.
It's a lot of stairs. I have a spiral staircase in as the only interior stair in my house in St. Augustine, and I know a lot of people aren't that fond of them, but you really can't fall down a spiral staircase very far. And I know my mother-in-law used to like it because it's just, you got 2 railings and it's one step at a time. So I don't have an issue with it. I think whatever looks best.
So are we comfortable with, I guess, adding conditions that the applicant work with staff on this new design to eliminate the pop-up by relocating the stairs in some exterior manner, whether it's a spiral or not, and then also addressing the issue with the railing to something that's more historically appropriate?
Yeah, let's go to executive discussion, but in response to what Mr. Stamba was saying about what is the most appropriate, in my opinion, is the original direction that staff gave them, right?
Okay.
Having a hip roof. And the problem was that super enlarged deck, right? That would require posts that would increase the area of the addition, right? And we are already approving a waiver, right? There is a waiver request here based on the square footage of the addition.
I think those are good points. And so you wanted to go into executive session to discuss further?
Yeah.
I think that's what you were suggesting. Do we have any members of the public that want to speak on this case?
Not that I'm
Madam Chair,
aware
I
of.
do not see anybody, no.
Okay, so we'll go into executive session. Thoughts? I mean, I think everybody has kind of expressed how they feel about it. I do think it was a good suggestion to explore the option of a roof deck, but I can understand that there is some conflict in executing it design-wise to ensure that the accessory structure is still compatible with the primary structure. So I understand what you're saying, Mr. Jaroslawski, that really the first design is more compatible with the existing structure.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is that it doesn't have to be, comparable, like completely comparable per se. I think that will be a better addition to the neighborhood. But, I am not opposed to doing a roof deck, but evidently that pop-up that was created there is not, satisfactory, let's call it. So, I don't know if there is a way to push that stair like an L-shaped stair, like a regular exterior stair that we see all over the place, right? And maybe has a nice, solid wall with railing and just lands on the roof deck without cover, right? And that will eliminate the pop-up, right? So when you get to the roof deck, you have a railing, the same parapet of the stair will continue, creates the parapet of the roof, and will not, create a pop-up. That is what is bothersome. That's my opinion now. I fully trust staff that they can work with the applicant to reach a satisfactory design, right? Based on these directions.
I agree. Can you sketch that out for us?
Sure, I'm gonna have to give you a net service proposal for that.
So I'm having a hard time like going back and forth between my screens, but Ms. Mittner, is it a separate motion for the variance or?
Yes, please. If you could approve the Class B with the 2 waivers, and then a separate one. I did assign them the same case number because they're contingent upon each other, but it would be clear, just like when you all do a demolition and new construction in the same situation, then it would be clear as we work with the applicant to revise for that.
And wasn't there specific wording that was supposed to be read for that?
It is in your packet, yes.
Would you be able to put that? I don't know if anybody has that up. Tough to talk.
Yeah, I have it here.
All screens.
Yep.
That's okay if you don't. I'm sure someone has.
I think Mr. Jaroslawski said he had it. That would be wonderful.
And then what was your recommendation on the case? I mean, I think
2 motions, approval on the Class B and the 2 waivers, and then of course the new construction, the COA, whatever conditions the board was looking for direction on, or looking to give the applicant direction on with the stair.
Okay.
We don't have to do a continuance for that because it's gonna you know, be basically a new design?
Whatever the board
Or a
wishes.
significant design.
Sure,
I think
whatever
it's
the board
well within
wishes.
Staff's purview to make that decision. I mean, we've given them a lot of guidance on it. I don't think we need to make them come all the way back here.
Right.
I agree. I think that's, Ms. Mittner, do you feel you have sufficient direction?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Great.
So what do we want to do? Do we want to give them two options and work with staff on the two options, or just a blank card to work a redesign based on these conversations?
I mean, I liked your suggestion of how to, you know, design it so that it works with the roof deck.
Okay.
I think that gives the outdoor space that the applicant is looking to achieve.
Mhm.
And my feeling is that as presented, it's not something that I could approve. And I agree that the applicant should work with staff to come back with something after considering the comments made now. Certainly, I think we've given them a sense of what we would want. But as to define it any further, I don't have the words to do that. Other than just to, and I'm not going to make a motion right now because I want to hear what the other board members say. If Mr. Casatley has got specific language too, because I mean, to come back and go through the whole process is not what I'm in favor for, but some type of motion to direct the applicant to work with staff based on the comments made at this point. And it's unfortunate that we're having to work through this, but it's definitely a work in progress because we're just not there yet.
So that is also perfectly doable, right? It's another month. They would have to work with staff and come back with another design.
Do we feel that they need to come back, or can they work with staff?
I trust staff will be able to work it out with them. Staff knows where we're at with it. So if that's where the other board members feel, I'm comfortable voting and placing our trust in Ms. Mittner to work with the applicant.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I would hate to see them have to come back a third time. So I
Right.
think that would be preferred. Who wants to make the motions?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to, I guess we're making a motion to defer to staff to approve a new design for the rooftop.
But there is two motions because one is what I was trying to find. One is for the waivers that are requested.
And I can work on trying to find, I'm still working on trying to get that language pulled up on the
I
screen.
have it. I have it here.
I have it here also.
Oh,
Whoever wants to do it.
Mr. Jarlowski, if you want to go ahead, that's fine.
No, you can do it.
I move the Historic Preservation Board grant application number 20-48, a request by Mr. Jim Lecadera for a Class B special use permit to allow a 1,000 square foot accessory apartment on a lot that is 50 feet wide at 509 N Street. The motion is based upon the testimony presented along with the application submitted and staff report, which constitutes competent substantial evidence. The board hereby makes findings of fact that each of the criteria in Article 2, Section 94-36, Section E, 3, and 4, and 5 has been met.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Second motion.
I move that the Historic Preservation Board regarding application number 20-48 advises the applicant to work with staff based on the comments made at this meeting to come up with an appropriate plan for roof access for their deck.
But otherwise, it's approval for the new construction.
Or otherwise it's, sorry.
I just want to capture the approval of new construction in there with those conditions.
Okay.
So stated.
The application section with the following conditions as stated. Yeah.
Sorry, that threw me off. I'm a little, would someone else like to take a crack at it? I'm a little lost on where we are.
I suggest you just amend your motion to include approval for the new construction.
Okay, all right. I move that we amend my prior motion for the approval of the new construction.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for working with us.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Good evening.
All right, that was a bit of a curveball.
Okay, moving on to case number 20-55, 510 56th Street. It's hard to make motions without the board packet that we're so used to having.
Madam Chair, that should be everybody.
Okay, could you please raise your hand to be sworn in?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be truthful?
Yes.
I do.
Okay, Ms. Fenn, if you would like to proceed with your presentation.
Yes. I submitted everything. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I submitted everything through pictures to Aaron through email. I just had one thing that I wanted to add to it. When I actually went by the job site, it's located on 56th Street. There was a comment on there that you guys had said that there was a couple of residences. This was the last remaining residence of its type. And when I drove up 57th and 58th and 59th, I found a couple of ones that were comparable, if not exactly the same as this one. And there is a huge empty lot across the street from this address as it stands right now. That's where I guess the city of West Palm Beach owns that lot, and they're going to be doing some kind of redevelopment. And if we demo the area that we propose to demo, and it becomes part of the funeral home, the homeowner actually owns the funeral home and the property surrounding it, it would actually match the same corner as existing on that the city owns on 56th and Broadway.
So you're saying they would be matching vacant lots?
Well, it would be like, it's the same exact shape. Right now, it's a vacant lot on 57th, from 57th through 56th on Broadway. That's completely open right now. It's about 1.2 acres. And on the other side where the house is actually located on 56th, if you look at on the map, they have the funeral home that's located on Broadway, the parking lot behind it, and then the house to be proposed to be demoed. It would actually match the exact same footprint as across the street. Therefore, nobody would ever notice that there was a missing home because they were saying that there would be an empty lot here. This would just become some part of the easement of the funeral home because they do not want to do any kind of reconstruction. They just want to remove it. They've redone the roof on this structure. They've redone the flooring. They've done all kinds of different things. And the reason my pictures don't show the actual damage is the asbestos. There's asbestos siding around the entire structure, and the termites are in between the walls and the asbestos. So when you look at the structure from the outside, it actually looks like a good home. But as you peel the asbestos off, you see that, I mean, when I go to take the paneling off, I'm pretty sure the entire wall is going to fall down. And the subfloor, the toilet's already falling through the subfloor. And he's tented this property at least 3 or 4 times. He's put a new roof on. The new roof was 7 years ago and it's already caving in. And he's just been having issue after issue on top, and nobody lives there and hasn't lived there for 1.5 years. So he's had some squatting issues in this house. We've already pulled the plumbing out of the house, the sewer. We pulled the electrical out of the house because when we were going through the city of West Palm Beach, they had told us that, you know, as a condition to our demo permit, we needed to cap the lateral. So that's already been done. And then we found out that we had to come to the Historical Preservation Board. So we've already de-energized the house because he was afraid that it was going to catch fire just because of the way it is. We pulled the sewer out of it, and, you know, he can't insure it because it's a high crime area, and he's just having a really hard time with it. So we're proposing just to demo it, landscape the area, grass and greenery to match the way it looks at the funeral home. He has a nice set of hedges going along the sidewalk, and then basically encompass it into the funeral home. So for anybody who lives in the city, anybody that lives in the neighborhood, anybody walking down the street, it would never even propose to even look like there had ever been a house there. And if they looked across the street where the city of West Palm Beach now has an empty lot and they're proposing to build something there, there's a sign up there, it says some kind of a redevelopment and call this number and this, that, and the other. If you were looking at that lot and you turned around and looked backwards at the funeral home area, the footprints are exactly the same on that corner. So, and then the residential area would begin. So that's where we're standing.
Okay. Questions of the applicant? Is there a reason why the property owner doesn't just sell it?
I'm not sure. I've never asked him that. I do know that he owns this. Here's the funeral home. He owns the property next door to it. He's owned a lot of different areas. I think the way it is right now, he probably can't sell it. I mean, it's full of asbestos and termites, and the house next door has termites, and they just got tinted. So the termites come to his house, and it's just kind of going back and forth because there is no concrete floor. So it's sitting on concrete pilings right now. And there's wood trusses going through the concrete pilings, and they're all just completely deteriorated. So at this point, I don't know how he could sell it, or if you could, I don't know. I mean, probably to a cash buyer, but I'm not too sure why he's not interested in selling.
Okay, and have you provided any documentation for the testimony you're providing as in regards to the asbestos, abatement options, costs, anything like that?
We were going to remove it. I work for S. McDonald Contracting, and we were going to be removing his asbestos to demo it. So there was no proposal to save the structure because he's put so much money into this structure over the years that he's just over it. He's actually never lived in this. It was just basically a caretaker's house for the funeral home. So a bunch of people have lived in it. And at this point, it's just been empty. And he said he's put enough money into it, and if we can't demo it, it's just going to sit. But at this point, he has squatters, coming in and out of it, and he's just having a tough time. He's an older gentleman. I think he's in his 90s. So I'm not too sure why he doesn't want to sell.
Okay. Any further questions of the applicant? Okay, we'll now move on to the staff report.
Good evening, board. Aaron Barger, Historic Preservation Planner. Oh, that is the wrong presentation, excuse me. Aaron Barger, Historic Preservation Planner. Here we have the demolition of 510 56th Street. Here we have the project location highlighted in red, and as the applicant stated, it appears that the property owner also owns these 3 other properties right here. This is the funeral home, and the property that the applicant also mentioned right to the north is what has been currently consolidated. So the request is for demolition of a contributing primary minimal traditional structure built in 1951. Actually, some additional information came forward, and the structure was actually built in 1947, and the non-contributing accessory structure was actually built in 1951. And they're citing termites, black mold, and asbestos for the reason for the demolition, and this is within the Northwood Harbor Historic District. Here we have a couple photos of the main structure. And from the exterior, the structure does seem to be in decent condition. It does need some work. And here we have the accessory structure, which is listed as non-contributing. And just to let the board know, in the original ordinance for Northwood Harbor in 2006, the primary was contributing, as well as the accessory structure was non-contributing. And then for the resurvey, when it went to commission in 2019, the statuses of the buildings did remain the same. This is from the green card, which was an assessment done in the 60s, and the structure was built in 1947. The garage was built in 1951, as well as there's an addition to the main house in 1952. So staff has reviewed the criteria for demolition for the primary structure. This is a contributing structure, and demolition of a contributing primary structure will represent irreparable loss to the Northwood Harbor Historic District, as well as the city of West Palm Beach. There also were no plans submitted for new construction or any information submitted that would illustrate the ability or the lack of thereof to actually rehab the structure. Regarding the demolition of the accessory structure, which is non-contributing, its loss of a non-contributing accessory structure would not represent an irreparable loss to the Northwood Harbor Historic District or the city of West Palm Beach. Staff has 2 recommendations. The first recommendation is to deny demolition of a contributing primary structure. And the second recommendation would be to approve the demolition of a non-contributing accessory structure. There was public comment received from the Northwood Harbor Neighborhood Association. It reads, it has been brought to the Northwood Harbor Association board members' attention that the owners of the 510 56th Street are requesting to demolish a contributing historic house built in 1951 in the Northwood Harbor Historic District. In October of 2018, Northwood Harbor Association submitted an application to the West Palm Beach Historic Preservation Division for redesignation of the Northwood Harbor Historic District. This redesignation was passed on May 6, 2019, ordinance number 4826-19. We're requesting that the board deny allowing case number 2055, a contributing historic home, to be demolished in the Northwood Harbor Historic District. This would set a negative precedent in the future of the historic district and the homes within this community. Thank you for considering our request. Northwood Harbor board members. Thank you.
Thank you. And were you provided evidence, Mr. Borngraber, for the presence of termites or asbestos or black mold?
For asbestos, there was an asbestos abatement that was submitted with the application as well as the building permit, but there wasn't anything illustrating that there was termites or black mold or the feasibility to remediate those for rehabbing the structure.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any further questions of staff? Okay. Seeing none, do we have any additional public comment other than the letter that you read?
Chair, I don't see any other public comment, no.
Okay. So we'll go into executive session. I mean, obviously, demolition is not something that this board takes lightly, and my concern is that there's insufficient evidence that justifies such an extreme measure as an irreparable loss of a contributing structure to the historic district. How does everybody else feel?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think that if we can get
Yeah, I agree with you.
professional, certification saying that the house is irreparable and is a danger to the neighbor, we can look into that, but I don't think that in this way we can approve a demolition of a historic structure.
Madam Chair, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and the other board members who have expressed their opinion. At this time, I don't see how I could support an approval of a demolition.
I think considering the age of the applicant and since the person representing the applicant, it would seem to me is just works for a company that's responsible for the asbestos abatement, that we need to give the applicant a letter with very detailed explanation of what constitutes evidence for the things that they claim.
I agree. I agree with the board.
Mr. Borngraber, what were the communications? Did you have any direct contact with the owner or just with the construction company?
All my communications were with Kimberly from the construction company.
Okay, and were they made aware of, obviously they were made aware of this report in advance of the meeting, but was there any additional conversation about staff's concern? Do you feel that it was sufficiently communicated why staff was not supporting this?
I believe so. Also, before they submitted application, they were provided the application, which does provide requirements for demolition.
Okay. Okay. Would someone like to make a motion? I mean, do we want to broach the subject of the non-contributing accessory structure? So is it an either or recommendation, or are you recommending both, or what, how, Mr. Borngraber, how are you presenting those recommendations?
So I'm actually presenting two separate recommendations. One motion for denial of the contributing primary structure, and a second motion for approval of the demolition of the non-contributing accessory structure.
Okay. Okay, would someone like to make those motions?
Okay, so I move that the Historic Preservation Board deny application number 20-55 for demolition of the main contributing structure. The motion is based upon the testimony presented, along with a staff report that competent substantial evidence of record has not been submitted that satisfies the standards set forth in the Historic Preservation Ordinance, Section 94-49 of the city's zoning and land development regulations for demolition.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
I move that the Historic Preservation Board approve application number 20-55 for demolition of a non-contributing accessory structure in accordance with the demolition guidelines as set forth in the Historic Preservation Ordinance, Section 94-49 of the City Zoning and Land Development Regulations. The motion is based on the testimony presented along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitute competent substantial evidence.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, thank you, Ms. Fenn.
Thank you.
Moving on to case number 20-56, 253 Barcelona Road.
Madam Chair, that should be everybody.
Okay, could you please raise your hand, Ms. Houlihan, Mr. Houlihan, to be sworn in?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be truthful?
I do.
Thank you.
Sorry to jump in there. I do see under attendees, there's Margaret on. Did she want to join for this case?
Margaret, I think just wanted to listen in.
Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
didn't mean to. Oh, yes, there, I see it in the notes. I apologize.
And I see a note just from the previous applicant, Ms. Fenn, if you're still listening. So the application to demolish the primary structure was denied. The application to demolish the accessory structure was approved. So if you have any further questions, please be in touch with Mr. Borngraber. Thank you. Okay, sorry, Mr. Houlihan.
No problem at all. Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Houlihan. I'm a local architect and I represent Ann Norton Sculpture Gardens. Probably in your packet and the staff report that's going to follow mine, you'll learn more about the amazing place that Ann Norton Sculpture Gardens is if you're not already familiar with it. It's 2.4 acres on Flagler Drive. The main house that's the subject of this application was built in 1924-25, designed by Maurice Facio, and it was expanded twice by the architect Marion Sims Wyeth. A remarkable structure, and it was landmarked, listed on the National Register in 1990. Ann Norton Studio is also on this campus. Ann Norton Sculpture Gardens is embarking on probably a 3 to 5 year journey of making this place something that'll be here forever. They have new leadership. They have new board of directors. Many of those people are historic preservationists like myself, and they're very much committed to the future of this property. We generally agree with the staff comments, and we would normally accept them, except there are a few pieces of information that I should have provided ahead of time that probably led to a misunderstanding. The funds for this project, and I'm speaking of the window replacements now, the funds for this project are coming 50% from the federal government. They are earmarked under hurricane recovery and hurricane hardening dollars from the federal government, and they are tied to new language in the Secretary of Interior guidelines that speaks to resilience to natural hazards. That's an important move forward in light of climate change and things like that, the increased intensity and frequency of flooding and hurricanes. Somebody wise at the Secretary of Interior's office said, why are we spending dollars rehabbing these buildings over and over and over again? Why don't we do it once and harden them and save money and also make them more likely to be viable many decades to come? And that led to the new language that was added. I forget when, Frederick probably knows. So that sets up the request, it sets up the grant funds, and it sets up the reason we are requesting that all of the windows and doors be allowed to be replaced, because we, for two reasons. We think it's essential to the hardening program to do all of them. And we also believe it's the least impactful to the historic character of the structure. The reason we believe that is because some of the options that are available when you repair a window and leave it in place, many of those are technically infeasible in a high wind zone, and others do not address the reality of the way hurricane winds work. Hurricane winds work both in the positive and negative direction. You are 3 times more likely to have negative forces, which is sucking, than you are to have positive forces. It is also possible that the negative forces can be stronger than the positive forces. So some of the suggestions are treatments on the inside, like interior shutters and plexiglass panels and things like that. Anything done on the inside would do nothing to mitigate the threat of the sucking forces of negative wind pressures. Also, when the home was listed in 1990, one of the comments was that the interior of the home is in pristine condition dating back to 1937. anything done on the interior would be a real sacrifice to the historic nature of the home. So I hope we can not consider any sort of interior treatments. The exterior treatments, if you leave the historic windows in place, are a series of shutter type of options. A plexiglass panel on the outside, armor screen, taking those two together, they have similar failings. Both of those are designed to prevent a flying coconut or something like that from breaking through the window, but they don't address, again, the pressures. An old window needs to be, any window needs to be fastened to the substrate in a way prescribed by engineers, and it's very difficult, if not impossible, to do that with an old window. So, and to my way of thinking, and there's probably other options I'm not considering, but that leaves you with a traditional shutter, which is an option, except in my opinion, in the opinion of Van Knowlton Sculpture Gardens, the fasteners and potential brackets and so on that could be there 6 months out of the year, certainly the fasteners would always be there. They harm the exterior more than a replica window would. And we're very much in favor of the replica window pathway because it's the least impactful. And that's language right out of the Secretary of Interior's guidelines, that we're now to accept some loss of historic character for these hurricane hardening efforts. And it's supposed to be minimized. And we believe this is the minimal, least impactful, because we're not touching the exterior with fasteners and brackets and so on to allow for a shutter to be put in place. And so we're asking you to consider allowing us to do all the windows and doors rather than this approximately 75% of them. I fully understand why the front would be the one you'd want to preserve, but I do not know of a practical way to do that, or one that's less harmful than actually replacing the window. The other thing I want to bring to your attention is that there are two other agencies above this one, not that you're not the greatest board on the planet, but the state of Florida and the national people also get a say in this. Everybody forgot that the grant request was for window replacements. And we've now worked our way back through the state, and we're now at the federal level to remind everybody that the request was for window replacements. This is being done under the Resilience to Natural Hazards section of the Secretary of Interior guidelines. And window replacement is something everybody at one time agreed was the right thing to do, gave us the grant and so on. So Frederick has an email from Tim Konecki letting her know that we've talked and everybody is on the same page, but they're withholding judgment until we hear from the people in Washington. So I bring that up because I would regret if the local board was more restrictive than the state and federal board. To say that another way, whatever the state or whatever the federal government says we have to do, nobody's going to be able to, work around that. We're going to have to accept that. That'll either be as restrictive as you're suggesting, or hopefully less restrictive. And we would hope that everyone would be willing to default to the judgment of the federal government. That's my presentation. I'll let staff do their thing, and then we'll do a bunch of questions and answers, I hope.
Okay, do we have any questions of the applicant?
I had a question. The one option you suggested of putting shutters, if shutters were never on the house to begin with, that seems like something that would be contrary to historic preservation guidelines. And secondly, it would seem to me, you mentioned plexiglass as an exterior option. It would seem that there should be an option using some sort of shatterproof glass, some sort of bonded glass that could be an insert into the existing window and secured into place that would satisfy preserving the existing window as well as preventing damage from hurricanes.
I don't disagree with you, and that's consistent with some of the suggestions in the guidelines that I've read. The problem is that I think those guidelines are written for the entire United States, and they're not written specifically for places that have to meet 170-mile-an-hour winds. The plexiglass or glass and so on, those work fine for reducing the threat of an impact. But as I said earlier, the window itself has to be fastened to the substrate so it entirely gets sucked out or blown in a high wind event. There's no way to do that with a historic window. It is not designed to have the multiple fastening locations. It's not beefy enough to receive those fasteners. So you're left with some method that achieves the wind resistance separate from the window itself. And the only thing I can think of is either an exterior or interior shutter. And the interior shutter would be horrible, and the exterior shutter would, I think, be more harmful than a replica window.
Just to continue, I mean, obviously, I'm not an architect, I'm not a builder, but wouldn't it seem that the window casing, okay, would be surrounded by 2x4s or something additionally thick that could hold a screw or something like that would satisfactorily hold the window, the insert into place?
You're absolutely correct. There's going to be a very solid what I'm calling a substrate. The wall.
That's what you're putting the substrate.
The exterior walls of the home are definitely there, and they're very, very solid. The problem is in the window itself. It's a window that's 95 years old. It's a window that has a relatively small jamb and head. It's not designed to have multiple fasteners at a spacing that's required by the Florida Building Code to achieve negative 50, 60, or 70 pounds per square inch of wind loading. It's simply not possible. I've talked to Robert Brown, the building official, about this on other projects. If you can repair them in place without having to remove them, which is probably 75% of the time, it has to go to a shop to be repaired and refurbished. If you can sufficiently repair them in place, then you are grandfathered in, and you don't have to meet hurricane code. That's good, for the code purposes, but it doesn't meet the goal of the federal government and Norton Sculpture Gardens of hardening this structure so it's there for the next 100 years.
So, Mr. Horrigan, what is the exterior construction of the house?
Believe it or not, to be determined. There's as I mentioned, Marion Sims Wyeth expanded this house twice. The period of the original construction would indicate hollow tile, clay tile, and some investigation has shown concrete foundations with hollow tile on top of it. However, there are other indications that some of the exterior walls may be load-bearing wood walls. So part of the, once we get a contractor on board, part of their scope of work will be to do limited destructive examination to determine what's there and then finalize the window specification for the appropriate substrate.
Correct. And my question is because, if it is confirmed that there is hollow clay, tile, probably, all the rough opening will have to be poured solid, right, to receive a new
Correct. Correct. So there's a lot of work that you do to do this, and it's a great indication of how different a 21st century window is that withstands 170-mile-an-hour winds to a window that's there now, literally delicately in an opening that would not survive a high wind event.
Correct. What about the other two conditions that all replacement windows shall feature clear glass, no low E or tinting of any kind? Are you in agreement with that?
Totally agree with that. Again, my goal, I've been fighting historic preservation battles in the city of West Palm Beach for close to 30 years. My goal is to do a great, respectful job for this property, and all that makes 100% sense to me. And my client and Norton Sculpture Gardens has no problem with doing that. That's exactly how we would have specified it.
And what about condition number 3? All balcony components that require replacement instead of repair shall be submitted to staff for review and approval of replacement.
Yeah, well, wonderful comment. Again, something we would have done. To dig into that a little bit more, you have the reason this home is classified as the Monterey style is because of the Marion Synpoias addition, although it was originally a Mediterranean Revival Fosio home. The classic balcony over the front, designed by Wyeth, has cast iron balustrades, many of which are significantly corroded and would have to be made either in replica or if there was someone talented enough to restore them, that would be the first option. So the staff comment is spot on. We're going to try to preserve and restore the ones that we can. The ones that are too far gone are going to have to be made as an exact replica. And we would submit drawings and verification that shop drawings, even for the city to review, to be certain that we're making exact replicas before they show up on the job site and a mistake was made.
Thank you.
You mentioned the Secretary of Interior standards and the portion addressing hazards. I'm sorry, resilience to natural hazards. And I just pulled up the document to familiarize myself with it once again, and I'm not seeing anything that's really advocating for the replacement of historic windows. There's specifically a recommendation to explore shutters, but I think that that's of a concern. And I think that staff is trying to be practical about the need for hurricane protection. But of course, this is an incredibly significant structure to the city of West Palm Beach. Mm-hmm. So is there any way that you would consider further preserving those street facing openings?
It's a high consideration of mine and Norton Sculpture Gardens. It's just, I do not know of something that makes it practical because of the requirement to meet the Florida Building Code at 170 miles an hour, and the source of the grant funds to hurricane recovery and hardening. I have an exhibit that I provided with Frederic that is an exhibit from the language that I underline a specific sentence that it speaks to sort of a new thinking that we need to accept minimal. Am I still there? Everybody still here? Okay. We need to accept minimal reductions in the historic character of properties. That's it there. That's the quote. At the top there, it says in some instances, a certain degree of impact on a building's historic character may be necessary to ensure its retention and continued preservation. I pulled that one out because it speaks to the big picture that I believe they're coming from. That it's more than the buildings themselves. It's the institutions, it's the public benefit that these facilities provide. And that's when they say at the end there, the retention and continued preservation. They also recognize that with the increase of more frequent and more intense flooding and hurricanes, that these buildings, although they can be repaired, there may be a day that they're gone entirely. We see images of entire towns wiped out by powerful hurricanes. That's part of the issue here. And the 170 miles an hour is there when that Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5 hurricane comes here. If we're not conscious of that, then we're going to spend money on mitigation efforts that won't allow this building to survive long term. And that's my concern. So I'm advocating for the best historic preservation job that we can do, but I also want to look long term and make sure this building is still there 20, 30, 40 years from now.
Considering the significance of this site, I'm guessing money is no object. So let's say we grant that you could replace the windows. How close are you going to get in terms of the look of the new window to the existing window? With money being no object, okay, for that work.
Is that a question for me or for Frederick?
Yes, it's a question for you. Yes, sir.
Okay. The window that should be in your packet is in the high end range of windows. It's expensive. It's in the area of $300,000 to replace windows and doors with this product. For the state of Florida and for the federal government, they requested that we write a justification statement and do a side-by-side comparison of this window and a window on the property. It's a very clear representation that there's very little noticeable difference between the two. It's an excellent product. They're custom made in Wisconsin. They will be custom painted to match what's there. They'll be, clear glass, and they'll be, except for the people on this board and myself and Frederic and Aaron and others that are in this business, it's going to be indiscernible that a replacement window has been put in place, in my opinion. And it's a replacement window that will allow this structure to survive a major hurricane and be there 20, 30, 40 years from now. That is what's important to us.
Thank you.
Do you have any further questions of the applicant?
Are the windows aluminum clad or are you doing wood?
Aluminum clad and wood are the same thing.
Well,
wood,
meaning, is it going to be painted aluminum on the outside?
yes, and the aluminum color is a custom color to match what's there now, and the wood is the material you have on the inside, and that's field painted to be compatible again with the historic interior.
No, I'm familiar with the Colby window. They are very nice windows, and they allow that thin profile, which some of the other companies don't, which is nice.
Correct.
But it would essentially be a change in material from a wood window that you would see at least on the exterior to a metal clad window.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, any further questions of the applicant? Okay, Ms. Mittner.
Yes, I'll go back to my presentation. Mr. Houlihan had supplied me with that image, and I had wanted to include it for you.
Thank you, Frederick.
Sure. As you've heard, this is a request for alterations of 253 Barcelona Road, known as the Ann Norton Sculpture Garden. And you've already received a brief history on it, but it certainly is a very important property in the city and for the community and the preservation work they do, not just for the artist in the home, but even, as you can see from this aerial, the landscape features as well. This is the front of the property as seen from Barcelona Road. And then if you go back, as you can see here, it does also front Flagler, but you have a large sculpture piece and a lot of landscaping. So really, even though it's a corner property, the visible elevation is just the Barcelona side from a public right-of-way, which is again this image. And this is where you can see the front windows that are proposed. This middle window is flanked already by louvered shutters, as well as this small window up top. And then you have some other doors and windows. Up here, this is an enclosed porch. And so this is not subject to staff's recommendation. We understand that replacing these jalousie windows with an impact single pane casement or perhaps multi-light casement would be appropriate, as well as this front door. So really, we're just talking about these 6 sets here, of course, the 2 bay windows. And then you kind of have the angle view, also some jalousie windows that are on the side, which is another reason staff has recommended just the front facing windows because of the tactile nature and the visibility nature, and because we do believe there are methods to protect it. I know there was some discussion about the code requirements, but if a window is existing, you do not need to make it code compliant for impact. They can remain as it is. Of course, it is desirable to make a building more resilient and to protect it from both impact and wind pressures, but we think there's other solutions to it than replacing these front windows. The comment about the interior application, that was referring to Indo windows. There would be no damage to interior framing. It is something that is precisely measured and then put within through kind of flexible siding. So there's no permanent mounting and no damage on the interior. It would not provide impact protection, but it would provide some pressure relief on the interior as well as insulation value. You would still need to implement an exterior product, whether that is a shutter that is impact rated, removable panels that could be applied over this, or armor screen, or perhaps this entire porch is encased or wrapped with a product that would meet that resiliency for a storm event. So it would have to be applied there or installed when there's a storm pending. And so there's certainly some labor involved in that, and there would be some fastening mechanisms that would be there permanently. But we think that that is minor compared to keeping the original feature there. So we keep focusing on the window and door replacement request, but there are a couple items that they're actually requesting. The window and door replacement with what staff fully agrees is an excellent product, the Colby aluminum clad in basil finish. That is in your packet. You can see even the profile of the muntins, the cross section of the framing, and it would match the existing styles. It does come in a double hung product. It is certainly a superior replacement product. The question is this situation meritorious for a replacement versus a repair? They're also asking for the removal of a small, about 60 square foot rear non-original addition. We see that it's not a safe situation, nor is it original, and so staff has no concerns about that. Staff is also fully in favor of the balcony repairs. It's just the concern of replacement, other general woods and stucco repair and repainting. So again, excellent product for the components that are being proposed for replacement. Again, just this evening's application is mainly focusing on, just focusing on the main house. The studio is not up for discussion because that has actually also, the studio also has wood windows, beautiful wood awning windows, but this proposal is just for the main house. And then these were very detailed drawings that Mr. Houlihan had submitted, clearly indicating the proposed changes and what the new windows would look like, as well as the floor plan clearly indicating that rear addition that's being removed, and again, the alterations on the structure. He also supplied these images, some close-ups of the windows, and then that small addition in the back that's being proposed to be removed. This is the justification statement he referenced. This was a product that I believe was developed in response to the state's concerns about the replacement product and the visual impact. So this is a comparison of the existing versus the proposed product. And then also the recently submitted component of the resiliency product. Again, we are fully in favor of improving the resiliency components of the site. Just today when I was out, I saw the flooding on Flagler, half a block away, not even half a lot away.
Right.
So it is a very susceptible site, but staff does believe there's other ways to address the front windows. So we do not believe that the application fully meets the Secretary Interior Standard number 6 in terms of repair rather than replacement. And therefore we're recommending approval for the request, except that the south facing windows shall be retained and repaired, minus the floor porch enclosure, and that all windows shall feature clear glass, no low E or tinting of any kind. And again, the balcony components that require replacements if repaired shall be submitted to staff for review, and you heard the applicants amenable to that. So it's really just a discussion of the south facing windows. I have been in touch with the state. I am in receipt of the email. I'd like to read that to you. That is from Timothy Knappe. He is the Historic Preservation Grants Program Supervisor at the Division of Historical Resources. And he writes, hello all being both myself, Tim Houlihan, and Rick Hilburn, the state architect, and the grant manager, Cody Vanderploeg. It states, as confirmation of the current status of the project, the window replacement designs and justification statement are currently under architectural review with the Division of Historical Resources. Once the documents are approved by DHR, following any necessary edits being made, the documents will be forwarded to the National Park Service for their final review. As the funding agency for the project, NPS must approve the window replacement designs and justification before any such work can commence. So I read this email, and what I heard on my phone call with him is that they are considering the replacement of the windows, but it has not been fully approved by the state nor by the National Park Service. So as your certified local government coordinator here, my recommendation stands that we are supportive of the replacement of the other 3 elevations to help minimize the amount of labor that's required prior to a storm event, but that again, the south-facing window should be retained. Thank you.
Questions of staff?
Ms. Mittner,
Yes.
are you saying that that the state and the feds could overrule our requirements, our approval with conditions?
That would only be as far as the grant funding. We still have our own ordinance, and the permits would not be issued as such. Again, our board attorney can weigh in, but they may have a different opinion at the state and at the Park Service. But again, local jurisdiction in terms of our ordinance would not be trumped by them.
Okay.
I agree with what Ms. Mintner has stated. We have a West Palm Beach ordinance giving the Historic Preservation Board the authority over these historic districts and historic properties. And the board has this duty and responsibility to evaluate these applications under the standards according to our code. And so this grant money may be subject to some other entity evaluating their criteria, but we still must follow our code and go through our process.
I don't have any questions for staff. I agree with the comments made. And I believe that preservation is rooted on local preservation law and the ordinances in the federal and state. It's been my experience strongly defers to the local level on the CLG. So staff, I don't have any questions for you. I agree with your recommendations, and while it may not be the best recommendation to the applicant for the south-facing windows to be retained and repaired, I believe in terms of preservation, you're taking the most conservative way in terms of compliance with the standards. And I looked to other municipalities, those that have much greater inventory than us, like Charleston, and they've weathered many storms, and I appreciate the concerns that the applicant has. But in this particular case, I believe staff has made a good case for it, for the city, and I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Any further questions of staff?
No.
Do we have any members of the public that want to speak on this item?
Madam Chair, I don't see anyone from the public wishing to speak.
Okay, we'll go into executive session. I think, as I stated earlier, this is a very significant property to the city of West Palm Beach. And I think that, we should hold it to the highest standard or the highest level of preservation because of its significance. And I do think that it's reasonable what staff is requesting. You know, the second floor windows are accessible from a balcony. A ladder is not even needed to access them. And obviously the first floor windows can be accessed from the ground. So it's a total of 6 windows. And I think we want to be mindful of ensuring that these buildings last long into the future. But I think we also need to follow the Secretary of Interior standards, which always advocate that it's better to repair rather than replace. And I haven't heard any testimony this evening that these windows are not able to be repaired. So I think that that's the direction that I would like the board to go in, but of course you're open to your own thoughts and opinions, and I invite you to share them. And the last thing I just want to say is that I do think because federal funds are being used, that, you know, usually these projects are held to a higher standard and are expected to adhere to the Secretary of Interior standards. And of course, if the state feels differently, and the SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Officer, they can certainly rule differently on how those funds are going to be used. But that's my thoughts.
Your thoughts have been well stated.
Thank you.
I'm just going to chime in and say I agree with staff's recommendations. They put quite a bit of work into it, and I agree with so far with everything the board has said.
If there's no further discussion, would someone like to make a motion?
Here I go again. So I guess I'm just making a motion on case 20-56 and basically agreeing with staff's recommendations.
Correct. And I believe we might need to list the conditions.
Yeah, where do I find that? Sorry.
The last page of the staff report for that case. So it would really be, the recommended motion would be approval of the application with those conditions.
Can I just recommend approval with the conditions, or do I have to list them?
We prefer to have some factual findings and state those actual conditions on the record for the purpose of the minutes.
I tell you what, I have the form here.
If you do, that'd be great. I'm sorry, because I'm having a little trouble pulling it up.
Okay. I move that the Historic Preservation Board approve application number 20-26 for alterations in accordance with standards set forth in section 94-49 of the city zoning and development, land development regulations. This motion is based on the testimony presented along with the application submitted and the staff report, which constitutes competent substantial evidence. In addition, the approval of this request is made conditional upon the following restrictions, stipulations, and safeguards that I move are necessary to improve compliance with the purpose and intent of the Historic Preservation Ordinance, the Historic Preservation element of the Comprehensive Plan of the City of West Palm Beach, and the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, specifically standard standard 6, which states that deteriorated historic features shall be repaired rather than replaced. Where the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature, the new feature shall match the old in design, color, texture, and other visual qualities, and where possible, materials. The conditions include the following. 1, all south-facing windows except those in the enclosed second floor porch shall be retained and repaired. 2, all replacement windows shall feature clear glass, no low E or tinting of any kind. 3, all balcony components that require replacement instead of repair shall be submitted to staff review and approval of replacement component.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commend you for your restoration work. It's exciting to see that this building is going to be getting some love.
It's a
Absolutely.
fantastic project and a great team of leadership over there. It's going to make this fantastic well into the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
With that, can we have a motion to adjourn?
I move the board to adjourn the meeting.
There's a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.